Yum yum, all in Karl's tum.
My stomach's groaning really loudly, and I'm wondering if the mic can pick it up because it's right next to it.
Oh, fair enough.
It stopped out.
I was saying, is that the intro?
No, I'm
All right. You know what? Yeah, it is. Done. Let's go. In the dual and occasionally intersecting spheres of music and shredding the fuck out of a guitar, there is one name that is treated with more reverence than all others. That of Robert Johnson. Widely considered one of the finest guitarists to have ever lived, Johnson's prodigious skill with the instrument was such that even seasoned guitarists can't figure out how the fuck he made it make the sounds that he did.
So Robert Johnson is widely described as one of, if not the greatest guitarist ever.
Yes, to have ever lived. The best of all time.
So I'm assuming that his entire life must be like incredibly well documented.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But no. We know almost nothing about Robert Johnson's life, save for the fact he could make a guitar wail like a bald eagle with its balls caught in a mousetrap. Everything from where he was born up to where he is buried is completely unknown. We only have like scant biographical information about him. And we don't really know when he started playing guitar, how he learned how to play guitar, how he got so good at playing guitar, like what he did, where he lived, like who he hung around with. Just like we just know roughly whereabouts he was at certain times, and that he recorded a couple of tracks at some point.
So what era did he actually live in?
No, the 20th century. So you can forgive not everything about his life being known, but it's just quite interesting that the greatest guitarist to have ever lived, we know almost nothing about him, and there exist about 30 recordings of him playing the guitar, and there are 4 known photographs, I think 2 of which belong in the hands of private collectors who won't let anyone else see them or use them for commercial purposes. So whatever photo is behind me of the guy is the only one we could literally use for this piece. That's how little we know about him. But that's weird to think, isn't it? Like one of the greatest guitarists of all time, and arguably one of the most influential. And the only real stuff that he left behind was a handful of recordings that never went anywhere in his own lifetime and languished in obscurity for decades until people heard them and went, "Holy shit! This guy was ahead of the curve. Like this guy was like, if he was alive today, would be fucking on it."
I guess it's understandable, because if you're not appreciated in your lifetime,
yeah,
then all that remains of you when people finally realise how skilled you are
is what you left behind at the time. And obviously he was like a poor black man in the South, so like he was like, put it bluntly, like the bottom of the rung, and people didn't pay much mind to him until years later they realised, like, holy fuck, this is the best guitarist I've ever fucking heard. And and it's a shame, isn't it? Like, just to think if people in his town would appreciate it, all the music would have gone. But I guess that's the beauty of art, in that you do have those rare individuals who just shine so bright. So I think he died roughly around age 27. So he's a member of the 27 Club, probably the inaugural member, because that's roughly when we think he passed away. And he shone so brightly for such a short period of time that basically his legacy is now the greatest guitarist who ever lived. So maybe in a way, as harsh it sounds like, it's a good thing. Like, we don't know anything about him because the only thing we do know is that he's a baller-ass pimp who shredded the fuck out of a guitar. Yeah. So his lasting legacy is just going to be best guitarist ever. And you know what? That's a pretty good fucking thing to have on your Wikipedia page.
Do you think in the modern era that kind of person, like a legend in that right, can ever exist?
Or an undiscovered genius?
Yeah.
Probably, but once the genius of that person is discovered, we'll know pretty much everything about them. The only way you can avoid that happening is if you're someone like Banksy, who makes a concerted effort to hide their identity so only their art is really known. And even then, you could probably find out who he was, as long as you're not the police. Because Banksy will talk to journalists and stuff, just under the proviso they don't tell anyone who the fuck he is. Which is fair enough, that's his prerogative. But even then, the fact that we know about him and you can just go have an interview with him. But I don't think we're ever going to have 100 years down the line. Here's an amazing undiscovered genius from the 2010s. We do get it to a degree though, 'cause sometimes there's YouTube channels that go viral years after the person long stopped giving a shit, and obviously they're languishing in obscurity for so long. And so we have it in some regard, I guess.
I think humanity is just so interconnected, and it's so easy to get information across that in general in the world, anything impressive can just immediately be sent to everyone. It's
more like there will be amazing piece of music, art, literature out there that will not be appreciated in their time. But the difference is, unlike Robert Johnson, when we go back, we'll probably be able to find out about that person because they will have had an online presence, and we'll be able to track them through that and at least find out some information about them. Unfortunately, Robert Johnson didn't have a Facebook page, so we don't know fucking nothing about him. Which is, I think it just adds to the mystery. It's like, it makes for a more romantic story, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm imagining this really cool guy, and for some reason, I'm imagining him in like a grey suit with like a really cool hat on.
Well, that's what he looked like.
Is that what I should
Yeah, that's probably what you think it was. To be fair, though, the photo I'm looking at of him in front of me is him in black and white.
Yeah.
So the suit could be any fucking colour, I don't know.
But just imagine this really cool guy just walks into an open mic bar or something when there's people chilling. He just sits down, just plays like an absolutely amazing piece, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, who are you?" And he'll say, I'm Robert Johnson. Like, tips his hat and walks out, and you never see him again.
Well, I think that what he'd have done is he'd have grabbed a bottle of whiskey and walked out, because apparently one of the few things we do know about him is that he just fucked and drank all the time. So he was a rock star before rock stars were a thing. Because one of the rumours is that he died of just like sexually transmitted diseases from fucking too much. He's like, you know what? You do you, Robert Johnson.
I definitely need to get back to playing the guitar again, because like,
what, because you're being made to feel inferior by this dead man?
Well, I mean, I'm never ever going to be as skilled as this man. But what I mean,
no one
is,
will
like,
be. It's fine.
Just you said, you play guitar, and then suddenly he gets like he gets drunk and fucks all the time.
Yeah,
I could do that.
We make YouTube videos. Is that not enough? Is that not enough of a chat?
I'm behind the camera.
It's even better then. No one knows what you like.
You put me in front of the camera in a stream. I sang some songs. Suddenly everyone's talking about cream in the jeans.
There you go. I see you do it. Do you want to sing a song now? Do you want to impress us with your dulcet tones?
Carl, these videos are about you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's why I really think it'll be. Everyone always bitches in the comments about how you should get Brad in front of the camera once.
Yeah, and we don't do it because it'll upset the consistency of the channel.
I just think it'll be funny if just one of these days I'll just walk in front and walk back. Like they make such a big deal out of it. Why is Brad never there? It's just like, here he is, bye.
You walk in randomly all the time. We were filming last week. You just walked in. Whatever. Let's move on.
So we don't know where he was born or where he was died or buried.
Yeah, where he was died.
Where he was died.
I am master of magnet. Calm down.
Welcome to Die. So we don't know that. We don't know like where he came from anyway, what he played.
No, not really.
How did he learn? Like,
we don't know that.
Good?
What we do know is that he evidently had an unnatural affinity for the guitar and reportedly learned to master the instrument in just 2 years. And obviously, learning to master an instrument in 2 years is fucking impressive. Which means he was basically a virtuosic genius of the instrument. And it's a shame, obviously, we don't know more about his life, because it'd have been interesting to know, like, how his mind worked, or even just having more of his recordings. But evidently, only a few people give a shit at the time, so we only have what we have. But what I love about the story of Robert Johnson is that even now, decades after he's dead, seasoned veteran guitarists who have played the instrument for years and basically they're masters of it themselves will hear his recordings and go, how is he doing this? There's a great story. It was that Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones was listening. He was told by a friend, listen to this. This is Robert Johnson. And he's like, okay, cool. And he's like, this guy basically invented rock and roll. I was like, oh, cool, let's have a listen. And he's like, yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Who's the other guy playing with him? And so, what do you mean? Because who's the other guy playing on the track? There's no one else playing on the track, Keith. It's just him. And Keith Richards was like, it took me a while to realise it was one man playing the instrument because I couldn't figure out how he was playing chords and riffs at the same time, because that's something he could do. And that's fucking amazing, isn't it? Like, Keith Richards, he's been a rock star forever and will be a rock star until the heat death of the universe. And he, in all his years on stage and touring with other musicians and seeing people play the guitar, couldn't figure out what this man from 100 years ago was doing.
I can't even fathom that. Like, you'd have to play the chords on a few of the strings and then play the riffs in the others whilst letting the other strings ring out, but then also playing them all again whilst...
Yeah, and all we have to go on is audio recording, so we don't know how he played the instrument, and there's only 4 photos of him.
I'd be interested to see somebody, analyse it, basically...
and then try and recreate the playing thing.
Figure out which notes he played, and then put it onto a digital guitar so you could see where his fingers were.
Well, there probably is stuff like that out there, but obviously we're not going to discuss that today because that's getting too in-depth and technical, but it reminds me a lot of the story. Have you ever heard of the violinist Niccolo Paganini? I think I mentioned him once or twice before, but the basic story here is very similar to Johnson, where he's just a violin virtuoso of just such prodigious skill, people couldn't figure out how the fuck he played what he did. Because he apparently had something like Marfan's syndrome, which gave him giant, unnaturally long fingers, so he could span his fingers across 5 octaves or something stupid like that. A feat no violinist alive today can match.
Is he the guy who wrote the Devil's Song?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's Tartini.
Oh.
Tartini is the guy who wrote The Devil's Trill, which is another story, which is a composer called, I forget his name, it's like Giuseppe Tartini, who was asleep, and the devil came to him in a dream, played a song for him. Tartini woke up, transcribed his best estimation of that song, called it The Devil's Trill. So that is the most metal song ever written. But speaking of the devil, like Nicola Paganini, he was so good that people said, oh, he got his power from the devil. Because no one that good can be human. And he had to produce a letter from his mother to prove that he had one, because people genuinely thought he'd been birthed from like some black mass of just like evil in a graveyard somewhere. And they even said that years after he died, you could hear him playing in his grave, because obviously even death couldn't stop him making music.
That's a common trope with musicians.
Well, yeah, because the same thing happened with Robert Johnson, where he was so skilled at the guitar and learned and mastered the instrument in such a short period of time. The prevailing theory at the time was that the devil gave him his powers. But Robert Johnson's story is just a little bit more interesting than what you're probably imagining. Because what you picture when I say the devil gave him his powers?
I don't know, Robot Devil.
Yeah, that's what you're thinking.
Or Tenacious D Devil.
Yeah, but you're just thinking like the story from The Devil Went Down to Georgia, right? It's a generic cloven hoof devil giving a young man like a demonic instrument and bestowing him with his powers. No. The story of Robert Johnson is a little different, because the devil in Robert Johnson's story, at least according to some versions of it, isn't your cloven-hoofed, horned, red-skinned devil. It is a giant black man with a booming voice who gave Johnson a devil guitar and bestowed him with his demonic powers to play the instrument. And do you know why I love this story? Because it's basically Bayonetta. Because that's Rodin giving Bayonetta new weapons. So have you ever played Bayonetta?
I haven't, no.
Well, Rodin is a huge black dude who is a fallen angel, or a demon, as some would put it, who gives you weapons if you give him like angelic LPs which play music. Like in return for those, it's video games, it makes sense. And he gets the weapon by going to hell and personally beating the shit out of a demon and then bringing it back and giving it to you. And what I need you to do, Brad, or Nisha, if you end up editing this video, and I know it's going to be difficult given that there's only one photo of Robert Johnson to exist, or one that we can use at least, please now Photoshop Rodin from Bayonetta giving Robert Johnson like the demonic devil guitar from Devil May Cry 3 that Dante gets from Nevern. Please, can you do that?
Yeah, I or Nisha will.
Yeah, because you know what? Because I would watch a movie that had this scene in it. Because there's just something really awesome about the idea established in Bayonetta and Devil May Cry that demons, when you kill them, become weapons. I love that. So have you played Devil May Cry? Oh, you've seen me play it a bit, haven't you?
Yeah, I played through Devil May Cry 4 once.
And all the weapons in that are just demons who you slayed, who agree to give you their power willingly, and then you use it in combat, including like a demonic devil guitar that fires lightning and bats out of it. And it's fucking awesome. And the best bit is, though, in Devil May Cry 5, they released like a little short story before it that explained, so this is Devil May Cry 5. Where's all the other cool shit he's got in his adventures? Why is Dante still using his regular sword? Oh, and it turns out that he sold all his demon weapons to people to pay his light bill. Because he couldn't pay his fucking bills.
Why is Dante simultaneously the coolest and yet lamest person ever?
Oh, he's so lame. Because what I like to imagine is in all the scenes of him doing like the cool shit when he gets a weapon, just imagine he's in the room completely on his own. Like when he gets Nevern, he plays the guitar to an audience of nobody. Like he's that kid in a Metallica t-shirt shredding in his bedroom. And like there's all that scene needs is at the end, like Dante's mum knocking on his door. I'm like, Dante, keep that shit down. Try to sleep. Your dad's on nights. But, oh, that's so fucking good. Like all the weapons in that game are awesome. Like he gets 2 swords that talk to each other. Because the swords are demons, and just trust me. And like you kill or you defeat the guardians of these swords and you get them. And Dante, he's going to leave them behind. They say, no, wait, take us with you, because you're super badass and awesome and want to help you. And he goes, okay, on one condition, that you don't talk. And the swords go, okay. And he does this sick, awesome, like, demonstration of how good the swords are. And they go, impressive. And he goes, no talking. And in combat, if you do a really, really good combo, they will start laughing, and Dante will say in combat, silence, and they'll shut up. It's like, that's so cool. Why is this so awesome? And you also get like nunchucks from like Cerberus. Like with an actual Cerberus that like you do, and Dante will just make Bruce Lee noises the entire time. And then Devil May Cry 5, you fight King Cerberus, who is the king of the Cerberuses, and he gives you another set of nunchucks that have got triple elements, and he still makes the same Bruce Lee noises, even if it is the final fight against the last level boss and you're fighting for humanity. It's like, even fighting for humanity's sake cannot stop this man from like, what it's all over the joint. It's great.
So is Dante, like, is he actually just like a nerd but happens to have powers?
He's depressed.
Yeah.
Like, my take on it is he is depressed and he just puts on that front because it's the only way he knows how to interact with people. Because they show you a shot where he sat literally in the dark with the lights off because he doesn't need to eat because he's a demon. Just sat there, and you don't know how long he's been there. Someone walks in and he just looks happy that he's got something to do.
He just comes across as an excited kid.
No,
play with all his toys.
I've always read it as he's depressed.
He's depressed.
Yeah, because he can't die, and he doesn't need to eat, and he can't have fun. He doesn't enjoy anything except fighting, and obviously because he's basically One Punch Man.
Yeah.
Joey he's depressed because he beats everything so easily.
I love how your first thought was One Punch Man, and mine was Captain Barbossa. That speech he gives is like, I've not tasted this or felt the warmth of a woman's skin.
To bring it back to Robert Johnson and away from Devil May Cry, which I hate doing, so you know how cool Robert Johnson is. The truth of the matter is, he was just that fucking good. Although I am quite partial and would like to officially endorse, in my position as, like, you know, the head of this channel and the owner of Big Wangs Incorporated, the idea that the devil is a large black man who hands people magic instruments, because that's awesome. So we kind of got a little bit sidetracked during that video, and I talked a lot about Devil May Cry and the dumb weapons it contains. So, Brad, do you have any favourite like dumb fictional weapons from like video games, movies, TV shows, and the like that you want to talk about?
The first one that comes to mind, there's an Easter egg. I think it's Red Faction. Is it Armageddon? It's called.
There's a few.
The second of the later ones they did. There's this Easter egg where you can get a unicorn. You basically have to go through like a wall that's you like basically walk through a wall, then walk across this invisible platform, and you find a unicorn that fires rainbows out of its arse.
Oh, okay.
So you basically wield it like a weapon and pull on its tail, and it fires rainbows.
Well, that reminds me of this. I don't know why this game is in my head. Did you ever play the first-person South Park shooting game?
Yes.
For the PS1.
Are you gonna mention the cow launcher?
The cow launcher and the chicken gun. Because the sniper rifle in that game is a chicken, which you fire eggs out of its arse. But I always like the detail of you aim it by the two tail feathers and you use it as like a makeshift sight. And for some reason your basic weapon is a snowball, but you also have the piss snowball.
Yeah, I didn't figure this out until way into it. If you press a button, you can obviously take time to upgrade the weapon you've got.
Yeah.
So for a snowball, you'll
you
lower
piss on
it,
the snowball,
and you lift up, it'll be a yellow snowball.
And that game was actually okay, and I think it had all the original voice actors, which is like Matt and Trey. It's two people. But
yeah, it's not difficult to get them in.
And then you get like the alien gun where you shoot people with it and they do the dance.
They do, yeah.
They do the dance.
I like to sing about the moon and the June.
They do that, yeah.
Yeah.
I was wondering why that's in my head, and I'm glad that someone else remembers it. 'Cause I was thinking, I'm going to sound like such a nerd if I mention this fucking obscure piece of shit game from the PS1 era.
I used to love it. I think I still have it.
Well, me and my brothers used to play it. Me and my brothers used to play it because it had the multiplayer shooting element.
Yeah.
And you could play as the alien.
Did you ever? And there were loads of like invisible walls, like I mentioned, the Red Faction one, where you could walk through them and find better items.
Yes.
What other items were in it? I'm trying to remember some.
The cow launcher.
Yeah, the cow launcher was the one where you shot it and the cow landed on your head.
Yeah, and it killed you.
Yeah, your head went up its arse and then it took your health off as it went on. I think there was a flamethrower. I remember setting someone on fire.
But the thing is, if we're talking about dumb gun weapons, we can't not mention the king of this trope. It's TimeSplitters. Like, the TimeSplitters series is fucking amazing for this stuff, and it had it's not dumb, but it's just the mag launcher from TimeSplitters 3, where it's a gun that fires through walls. And they had no idea how broken that shit would be in a game where you can also pick up an upgrade that gives you like 100% damage boost. So what you do is go sit in a corner and just fire through the walls, and you can headshot people across the map through walls. It's like, yes, this is fair. This is the most fair balanced weapon I've ever seen. I am literally headshotting people from behind 4 foot of concrete. So dumb.
Yeah, it's like, not to bring up Red Faction again,
Okay.
but Red Faction 2 had the railgun. I think I mentioned that before, where you can stand anywhere on the map, go into a scope, and you can't see anything except circles, which are players, and you can shoot them from anywhere on the map.
And it goes for everything.
Yeah, so obviously if you find the railgun and go and hide, the other players then have to like scream watch, try and figure out where you are. Because otherwise you can't, they're just going to keep shooting you through a wall.
But that's why, obviously, that weapon in TimeSplitters was so annoying. Because if you tried screen watching, all you see is just bright red, and that could be facing any wall in the environment. And sometimes I remember my brother getting so pissed off, and I just remember seeing his like red blob of a character run towards me. I thought, oh no, scope out. Oh, there's a brick wall between me and him. Bam, 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 bam.
Well, if we're talking about dumb weapons, I don't know if it was cut out of a video, but I mentioned before the mod for GTA that turned bullets into cars.
Oh, that's so good.
So you've got a guy with a machine gun, and he just fires cars.
The best bit is, though, like watching just regular, like, you know, gameplay where they don't tell you that that mod's activated. Because I remember just watching one, it's just like a guy gets pulled over and he gets out of the car and he runs, and like the police officer's like, put your hands up in the air. Boom! The fucking car flies out of his gun at Mach 3 and just completely rubs this officer out.
Oh, before we're carrying about that, speaking of like putting stuff into those kind of games, I would highly recommend, it's a version of Saints Row 2 that you and I have played before.
Yes.
If you find the cheats for that, the game is you have to pick a point on the opposite side of the map that you have to get to.
You put on every civilian wants to try and kill you.
Every civilian wants to kill you. You put on low gravity, you put on all cars explode, everyone floats to heaven, everyone falls from the sky. And the idea is that you have to try and get to the other side of the city without dying. And it's almost impossible. Because the second you try and get into a car, like 300 cars crash into you, and you try and get out of a car and someone hits you and you go flying into orbit.
It just becomes Destruction Derby, the game.
So good.
Oh man, any more weapons you can think off the top of your head?
Let me have a root.
Because like Devil May Cry is full of them. Like you get the briefcase, which is Pandora's box, and it contains 666 different weapons.
I mean, if we're going to talk about awesome weapons video games, what about Ignatius' staff?
Oh god, Ignatius'
that can cut things in half.
Ignatius' big, mighty staff. You know what? Fact Fiend is an Ignatius fan club now, because we play some nightmare creatures, because you've got to admit, they're rare.
Yeah.
How can you go for the rare? Yeah. You're going to put behind me right now a picture of Ignatius, because that guy is a boss-ass motherfucker.
Depending on when this video goes up, both mine and Karl's Twitter profile pictures are Ignatius.
Just Ignatius, because he's so good.
Oh, he's so cool.
Because you figured out that in that game, Nightmare Creatures, you can just stun lock enemies by just spamming the fastest move in the game. It happens to be a kick. So Ignatius just defeats the hordes of the undead, like the titular Nightmare Creatures, by just continually roundhouse kicking them in the head and then cutting them in half with a blunt stick.
Yeah, the initial playthrough that we were going through, we got to like the end of level 2.
I hope someone clipped this.
They didn't. I had a look.
Fuck's sake.
We got to the end of level 2, and I jumped over this gap above water, which kills you
instantly. Well, Ignatius can't. Do you know what? No, it's not that Ignatius dies. That he fights the water and loses.
I think that his balls are just so big they just sink to the bottom.
Just like that anchor.
So yeah, I tried to jump over this gap and failed. Respawned on my last life. Jumped over the gap, and then a monster appeared from nowhere and knocked me into the water. So then Karl and I were like, fuck this.
We're going back in.
Yeah, we went back in with cheats enabled.
God mode. Ignatius mode.
Ignatius mode with unlimited items and health. And we ran to where this creature was, and I spent it was
a good 5 minutes
trying to orientate this thing so I could put it into the water.
Push it into the water.
I did it.
And then jumped in after it while throwing grenades everywhere.
And we like to picture that water goes on forever, and it's like Gandalf and the Balrog.
Just
with Ignatius just battling this thing all the way down.
He's going to battle it for the rest of time for the insult of daring to push him into a piece of water.
Yeah, Adam Crowley, like someone else can deal with that. Like Nadia
can deal with that. Ignatius has got a lesson to teach.
He's got beef.
He's got beef with the Nightmare Creatures. God, that game needs a reboot, man.
Fuck it. Hashtag remaster Nightmare
Creatures. No, hashtag rare.